Florence is associated with one figure above all others, Michelangelo Buonarroti. And of course, there's no place better than to see the extraordinary masterpieces left behind by Michelangelo than right here in Florence. Born in 1475, Michelangelo has left an enduring mark on the world of art. Expat Lifestyle with Bats. I hope you enjoy this episode as I provide you an overview, a summary of where you can see some of the fantastic masterpieces created by Il Divino, the Divine One, right here in Florence. Although I do take a quick trip down to Rome as well, so watch out for that section of this video. As always, please share, like and subscribe. Now let's explore where you can see the works of Michelangelo, both paid and free locations here in Florence. The Accademia Gallery is our first location. The big daddy of the collection is of course Michelangelo's masterful David, an inspiring work depicting a plucky shepherd boy who downed the brutish Goliath. And Michelangelo was only 26 years of age when he carved David from a block of stone that others considered unusable. Before meeting David, you'll pass Michelangelo's prisoners or slaves, struggling figures who were intended to form part of a massive tomb that Michelangelo was commissioned to create for Pope Julius II. So, number one stop, provided you can get your tickets organised, is at the Accademia, and I'm sure you'll probably know that that is where we see the great man himself, David, that iconic sculpture from Michelangelo, who produced that in 1501. So I'm walking along Via Rugisoli. It's about a 500 metre walk to the Accademia from the Duomo. Please remember to drop me a line in the comments if you have any questions. One thing to be aware of course, is that the Accademia is closed on a Monday. And that's the building just in front of us. Today I'm very fortunate. One of my colleagues is also a tour leader. So I've landed a free entry in today to show you around. Full price entry is €13. Book ahead. Pre-book a time slot as well. That way you're not waiting for too long. So you can get in and enjoy looking at Michelangelo's David and some of the other fantastic artwork within.
Rough draft. We know it's a rough draft also simply because of the texture. If you were to put this
Okay, so here I am in the hallway of prisoners.
scale to look at the tension in the body as well.
Sculptured from one massive block of white marble, David stands at over 5 metres tall. David is portrayed before battle, pensive but poised, and David was intended to be placed high on the Duomo. Instead, as soon as Michelangelo finished his outstanding work, David was placed outside the Palazzo Vecchio in 1504 and stood there until 1873. In that year, David was moved indoors to the Accademia. And how did Michelangelo create David from this huge block of marble? Quite simply with a hammer and chisel. Our next location, the Uffizi Gallery. And a visit here just reminds us about Michelangelo, that he was a true Renaissance man, well versed in all of the arts, including painting. And it's within this gallery that is huge, by the way, that we'll find a painting called the Doni Tondo. The colours are amazing. Now, visiting 2 museums in the one day might be a little bit of an overload, so perhaps try and schedule a visit to each of these first locations on separate days. And right now I'm walking towards the Uffizi Museum, and hopefully you have also booked a Beat the Line entry ticket. So behind me is the line for the pre-booked tickets. It's quite efficient, very efficient there. You order online and you can pick up the tickets just there. And look, in front of me we can see the sign hanging down from the ceiling there is where you can buy tickets on the day. But I would suggest you purchase online, pre-book, and the entrance into the Uffizi is just behind me over here. Collecting the tickets after pre-purchasing online, very, very easy. Just through the arches at the end will be the Arno River. One of the oldest museums in the world, the Uffizi Gallery, has a huge collection of Renaissance masterpieces with works by Botticelli. Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, to name just a few. At the eastern end of the Duomo, you will find the Duomo Museum. Quite underrated, really, and it is well worth a visit. Amongst other things, you'll find the original gates of paradise that were on the Baptistery. So those gates you see there in front of the Duomo are replicas. Now, in the Duomo Museum, you'll find one of Michelangelo's final pieces of work, a sculpture, and it's called Pieta, not to be confused with that beautiful piece of work that is in the Peter's Basilica. I'll show you that later. So this Pieta is unfinished. Now, this unfinished sculpture by Michelangelo depicts the Virgin Mary and the hooded Nicodemus. Look closer and you may recognise Michelangelo, a self-portrait indeed, as he did intend this piece of work to be placed on his own tomb. So there it is there, it's a lovely building. All the original art, the original doors from the Baptistery, they're all in here in the museum. It's well worth a visit, the original gates of paradise. These gates were moved here after the floods of 1966. Now, let's move to the Piazza of Santo Spirito, a bit of a favourite spot of mine. It's quite authentic. Some lovely restaurants and eateries in the piazza up there. And also at a slightly cheaper price compared to around here in the historical centre of Florence, because it's on the other side of the Arno, the southern part of Florence. Anyway, back to Michelangelo. In this piazza we have the beautiful Basilica of Santo Spirito, and it's quite modest in comparison to Santa Maria Novella, the Duomo and Santa Croce. Michelangelo's lifelong interest in anatomy and his incredible skill at rendering the human body were really honed in a surprising place in Santo Spirito. Adjoining the church was the local hospital. Now, Michelangelo stayed at the monastery next to the hospital as a result of his patron Lorenzo dying in 1492. Now, a young Michelangelo was then able to visit the hospital at night, where he spent time dissecting dead bodies that were awaiting burial. This work was really fundamental in the evolution of Michelangelo. So Michelangelo's thank you to the churchmen at the time was to carve them a wooden crucifix for the basilica. And as you can see in the video to follow, it's quite simple and elegant. Positioned in a chapel just off the church sacristy. Entry is free, so if you're up in the Santo Spirito area, it's a short walk from the historical centre. It's well worth a visit. So here we are at the Santo Spirito Piazza. I really like this place. It's got a nice ambience, nice feel to it. Have a look at the Santo Spirito Church. Plain, modest compared to, say, Santa Maria Novella, Duomo, Santa Croce, but built about the same time in that 13th century. So there you have it, a visit to the Piazza of Santo Spirito, and specifically the Basilica at Santo Spirito provides you an opportunity to see some original Michelangelo artwork for free. So where else in Florence can you see some of Michelangelo's work for free? Okay, so we've got the, I call it the fake David outside the Palazzo Vecchio, and also the fake David up on the Michelangelo's Piazzale, that viewing platform that Giuseppe Poggi created, I guess, in the mid 19th century. He wanted to create a viewing platform where you could admire Florence just like a postcard, and he's truly captured that. But up on that viewing platform is a bronze David. Okay, so you can have a good look at a bronze David up there. It's a lovely walk up to Pieta Michelangelo. Back to the Palazzo Vecchio, where we see the other fake David. Now, here's a good little story. Just to the right of David, as you'll see in the video, there is some supposedly original Michelangelo graffiti. Hey, check out this part of the video. The Piazza della Signoria has been the centre of political life in Florence since the 14th century, with the prominent Palazzo Vecchio overlooking the square. It has celebrated great triumphs and also agonising punishments. Now here's an interesting one. Can you see the etchings in that brick? Michelangelo's graffiti, apparently. Now there's several stories as to why this came about, but the one I like is that he got caught in a conversation with this character who would go on and on with this story, and Michelangelo became so bored that he just decided to start scribbling, doodling with his chisel, I guess. And that's what he came up with. Now, is it an image of the guy that was talking to him? We just don't know, do we? Nice little way to see the city. So I'm on Ponte Vecchio, on my way to Piazzale Michelangelo. So I've just come off via San Nicolò, and this is part of the old city wall, medieval wall, protective wall, keep the bad guys out. Okay, so through these gates and we head up the hill. It's a solid climb. We head up the hill to Piazzale Michelangelo. So I'm just thinking, before I start the trek up, might need some refreshments. Fantastic, isn't it? Just the history. Oh, I might get a drink over here, I think. Dying of thirst. Okay, and here we have it, Salute. This is the road that comes up. Not easy. Okay, so here I am on the Piazzale Michelangelo. The lookout, the scenic lookout overlooking Florence. I'm going to get over there in a minute and show you. But here we have a replica of David just behind me, Michelangelo's David. But what a vantage point. What a view we get to see. And you've just got to remember the history here. Birthplace of learning, Renaissance. It all started here in Florence, didn't it? The art, the science, Michelangelo, Galileo Galilei, and of course Leonardo da Vinci, and so many more, so many more. What this place has delivered is just huge, isn't it? It's iconic. It's iconic. So let's head over. I'll share some views with you, and I hope you enjoy. Now, if you plan to visit Florence, no doubt Rome is also on the itinerary, and for me it's about an hour and a half away on the fast train. When in Rome, do as Romans do and you visit the Vatican, don't you? The museum, Sistine Chapel, an exploration of Michelangelo's masterpieces in Rome can only really begin in one place, the Sistine Chapel. Unfortunately, cameras are not allowed in there, so I haven't got anything to show you, but trust me, it is just truly remarkable. Pope Julius II, between 1508 and 1512, I guess twisted Michelangelo's arm to get him to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And at the very centre of Michelangelo's epic biblical narrative is the most iconic gesture in the history of art, that trace contact between the fingers of God and Adam. And the Sistine Chapel visit is just remarkable. It truly is. You're coming face to face with the Michelangelo frescoes. It's just awe-inspiring. But there's more. We then go to the St. Peter's Basilica and marvel at Pieta. What a piece of work. Have a look at this. How can someone make this out of a block of stone? Right, so I've just finished a grand tour of Vatican City, Sistine Chapel and the St. Peter's Basilica behind me. And look, it was great. I booked the tour with TripAdvisor and I met them about 3 hours ago. It was a wonderful tour, by the way, and the big advantage is you pre-purchase or direct access, beat the line ticket. Otherwise you're going to be spending a lot of the day standing in a line because the lines are massive. Michelangelo's Pieta. Let's have a closer look. The Pieta, here's something you may not have known, is the only piece of work that Michelangelo ever signed. Now, seeing the Pieta is free, but there could be a very long line to get into the Basilica, whereas the Sistine Chapel, which is part of the Vatican Museum, is a paid entry, and I would recommend do that through a tour guide because there's so much to see. The Medici Chapels in San Lorenzo, just near the San Lorenzo leather markets, are just unbelievable. But it's one of those places where you walk past thinking that it doesn't look too flash on the outside. Now, I have an earlier episode on the San Lorenzo Basilica and it's called Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover. I'll include the links in the video description below. With an entry of only about €9, it's just remarkable. It really is. The San Lorenzo Medici Chapels are within a building you'd normally just walk past. The Medicis were Michelangelo's most important patron for much of his career. The most significant and personal commission that Michelangelo received from the Medici was to do with their funeral chapel. 2 incredible tombs dedicated to Lorenzo and Giuliano Medici. The tombs are magnificent. Behind me, the Duomo, the House of God, obviously the spiritual centre of Florence. But only 180 metres away is another special place that many people don't even realise is there. They walk straight past it. I'm taking you there now. See that dome in front of me? That's a part of the Medici Chapel, which is connected to the Basilica of San Lorenzo. There's the entrance. That'll cost you about €10 to get in. The Medici Chapels are part of the same huge complex of San Lorenzo. Now, as you can see here, we enter into this low vaulted crypt and we will find several of the Grand Dukes of Tuscany together with their wives. lesser known members of this illustrious Medici family. And from this low vaulted crypt, we walk up the stairs and enter the magnificent Chapel of the Princes. Mamma mia! Now, if you're short on time, if you're a Michelangelo fan, if you want to feel like a Medici prince or princess, even for an hour, then include this visit into your schedule. So let's take a moment then and talk about the Medici family. Politically active and economically so powerful. A banking family. The Medicis were one of the most important families of Italy during the Renaissance, and their influence extended across Europe. How rich were they? They were on a level with today's billionaires, for sure. That's the kind of scale that we're looking at. One estimate, the 17th richest people of all time, with an estimated worth of 129 billion. Now, the founder of the family fortunes was Giovanni Medici, 1360 to 1429. Under his leadership, the family bank blossomed, and he soon became the richest man in Florence, Italy, and no doubt Europe. Did you know 4 popes were Medicis? The most famous, Giovanni Medici, known as Leo X. He had superb taste in art, like the rest of the family really, and he wanted to rebuild and restructure St. Peter's Basilica in Rome with the help of Michelangelo, but there just wasn't enough money. That's why he created the indulgences, documents declaring that people who contributed to the cathedral were released of sins in exchange for money. Not everybody liked this idea, especially a man that was rising against the church, Martin Luther. For me, this visit has inspired me to delve further into the history of the Medici family, and of course, Michelangelo. Now, the last part of the Medici Chapels is the new sacristy, designed by Michelangelo himself and built at the start of the 16th century. The new sacristy was built by order of Pope Leo X to house the mortal remains of his brother Giuliano Medici and his nephew Lorenzo Medici, with Michelangelo being commissioned to design it. So, a burial tomb designed for members of the Medici family. When it comes to the High Renaissance, Michelangelo is as high as it gets. He was not only one of the best known artists of his day, but probably remains one of the best known artists ever. In my opinion, of course. When Michelangelo died in 1564, he hadn't set foot in his home city of Florence for over 30 years. Stricken with grief at the death of the city's most famous son, and horrified with the idea that he would be buried in faraway Rome, Florentines, under the guidance of Duke Cosimo Medici, resolved to sneak away Michelangelo's body back to his home city. His corpse was successfully smuggled out of Rome by a group of merchants. News of this plan preceded the group to Florence, where they arrived to a hero's welcome. Michelangelo was finally and permanently laid to rest in the church of Santa Croce, alongside some of the greatest Florentines to have ever lived. A grand tomb designed by his friend and biographer Giorgio Vasari. Hat off, of course, going inside, and let's check it out, shall we? It is beautiful inside. The Basilica of Santa Croce. Building began in 1294 and finished in 1442. It's sometimes referred to as the Pantheon of Florence, and it's a gem not to be missed. Beautiful and impressive, stunning art and courtyards. Here we see the tombs of many Renaissance greats. Niccolò Machiavelli, the father of philosophy. His work is based on the reality of leadership at that time, that certain principles are sacrificed in order to be successful. one of his famous quotes, "It is better to be feared than loved." So he was quite polarising. Dante, the father of Italian literature and Italian language, best known for his Divine Comedy. Great writers did not have to use Latin, so he was a pioneer by writing in the vernacular, the local language. Galileo, fundamental contributions to astronomy, physics, mathematics and science. So really the father of modern science. Built the telescope among his many contributions and challenged the church, which did put him under house arrest for his last few years. Of note, the church made official statements of regret much later in the 20th century. And Michelangelo, 1475 to 1564, 89 years of age, painter, architect, sculptor, poet, a Renaissance genius, and he was often called Il Divino, the Divine One. So there we have it, my episode on the great man, Michelangelo. Hey, this is a long episode, but I think he deserves it, don't you? His work's truly iconic. Talk about passing the test of time. We just still marvel at what he's able to achieve out of blocks of stone. Just inspiring, isn't it? The work he was able to accomplish. And what a long life he lived. Expat Lifestyle with Bads. Please share, thumbs up, subscribe, bell notifications on. I'll see you next episode. And by the way, I'm going to look at the top 10 ice creameries here in Florence. Now, I don't think I'll be able to manage all top 10 ice creameries in one day, so I'm anticipating this will be filmed over a few weeks here, but I'm looking forward to doing that one, that's for sure. I'll see you next episode. Ciao.